It's now 6:00 p.m. We are doing an interesting projection tonight. We're using Zoom right now, and then we will be leaving for closed session and going into our regular meeting information, which is available on the website. So join us again at 6:30 when we launch into our regular council meeting on the agenda for our special meeting.
No, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
You'll come out of closed session and start the meeting. So it's not at 6:30. You'll just come out, I think.
Pardon me. So after we come out of special meeting, we will start as soon as we are finished with the closed session. So we'll see you all, and if anybody's watching, we'll see you in a little while.
Okay, I'll start with the roll call. Excuse me, Councilmember Kandel.
Here.
Councilmember Haroff.
Yes, I'm here.
Councilmember Hilmer.
Here.
Councilmember Paulson. Let's see, I saw the verbal here. And Mayor Way.
Here. Welcome back, everyone. We were in closed session for about 20 minutes, and we have nothing to report out from closed session at this time. And we're returning to our regular agenda. And this is our first City Council meeting in which we're using Zoom. So bear with us, because we have been using a GoToMeeting platform before, and now we are using this different platform. So we're all going to get used to a new system. The first thing on our agenda tonight is public comment. And I'd like to remind everyone who may be listening in the audience that public comment is for items that are not listed on the agenda. And since it's items that are not listed on the agenda, by law, the council cannot speak on those matters. We can provide direction to the council, but we are not really allowed to engage in direct and extensive comments on anything. I would like to say that we have 3 emails that have come in for public comment, and they are now listed on the agenda. Allison has put them there. One is from Joan Lazarus, one is from Veronica Wilson, and another is from Lauren Brown. And you can read those that are on the agenda page that you can see there. But we will not be discussing those matters tonight until they are further agendized. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to make public comment at this time, who has not submitted it by writing? I guess they can raise their hand. Is that how it works?
It is.
And Lauren and Allison will call on them, and we will listen.
Thank you. If you are joining us via Zoom and you'd like to provide public comment, please hit the raise hand button at the bottom of the screen. And if you're calling into the meeting, you can press *9 if you'd like to join the speaker queue. We have both email public comments come in and some hands raised. So I'll start with Veronica Wilson. It is now your turn to speak to the council.
Hello, council. I apologize. I might not be understanding the protocol and procedures. I did submit a public comment via writing. So are we not able to address those things now?
We did receive your public, but it is not on an item that's on the agenda. So since it hasn't been agendized for the rest of the public to see, we can't really discuss it, but I could read your item if you would like.
Sure, that would be fine. And then I guess my question is, will it be on a future agenda so that we do have an opportunity to discuss it more?
Well, how would
openly?
Why don't you read your comment? Would you like to? Or I can read it if you don't have it handy.
You could. Mine was actually a follow-on comment to a submission by Mrs. Brown, who is also on the line. So if you want to read hers, that might be a better starting place.
Okay, so the public comment by Lauren Brown, which is on the agenda here. Hello, I would like to make a public comment at today's Larkspur City Council meeting. My comment is to request a name change for Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. I would like feedback as how to get this started, because Sir Francis Drake was a known slave trader, and Marin needs to have a street that has a more inclusive name. Thank you very much for your time. Warmly, Lauren. And the follow-up was what Veronica is bringing up, which is a similar question about that. So nothing we can discuss tonight since it wasn't agendized, but I can do some follow-up with you about this.
Okay, great. So you can follow up with Lauren and myself offline or separately from the meeting?
Separately from this meeting, yes.
Okay, that would be great. We're really looking forward to some guidance on how to move that forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
The next comment, public comment, is from whom, Allison?
Thank you. Our next public speaker will be Jean Friedel. Jean, it's your turn to provide public comment.
Hello, good evening. Jean Friedel, 358 Larkspur Plaza Drive. Madam Mayor and council members, I just wanted to call out the peaceful protest last Friday at Piper Park and the subsequent march downtown. Special thanks to Councilman Candell and his wife Andrea for attending. It was great to see you there. This protest was put on by two young adults, 13 and 14 years of age, I believe. And it was really inspiring to see this turnout from our little community to support this worldwide effort. And they both spoke so eloquently. I'm hoping the council will consider honoring them, this inspiring show of leadership from these two young people in our community, with a resolution or a commendation or whatever council might see. And I know you can't address that, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention that I thought these two young people did an outstanding job of leadership, and it might be nice to honor them.
Thank you, Jean.
Thanks.
Are there any other people with raised hands or who have called in or sent in an email for public comment?
Thank you. We'll have, oh, I see one more raised hand, so I'll do that. And then there is an emailed public comment that I'll follow up with.
Okay.
At this time, Lauren Brown, you can provide public comment.
Hello, Lauren.
Hello, thank you so much. My name is Lauren Brown, and I was born and raised in Marin County. And I love Marin so much. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for your time and attention. And I've taken liberty to start a petition on change.org, which has already garnered almost 200 signatures in 6 hours in support of changing Sir Francis Drake Boulevard to a more inclusive name. I plan on raising my family in Marin, because I had such a wonderful childhood, and I just really hope that I can raise a family where we use this main artery to create so many memories, from getting educated to taking trips to Point Reyes, and I can proudly say to them, we're driving down a street that represents something or someone who is inclusive to the broader community. I just really feel like Marin is such a wonderful place and is, you know, stands for inclusivity. And I think that this is a wonderful opportunity for us to kind of really make a change and make a difference, and really stand up to honoring figures that benefited from institutional slavery. So I was just hoping to, again, garner some support from other city council members today. And I just so appreciate anyone who's willing to help in this action. I've already emailed the Board of Transportation through Marin. So yes, I hope that we can add this to a future agenda item so we can get some traction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lauren. And like I said earlier with Veronica, I'll follow up with you offline.
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Lauren, could you tell us, with the change.org petition, is there a name for it or something so people who want to find that petition and sign it and can find it a little bit more easily?
Yes, thank you so much.
It would probably be best to just to email that to Allison so that we actually make sure we have it correctly spelled, etc. Is that
of course
for you to do that, Lauren?
Yes, I will email Allison, and in short, it's called Support of Renaming Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. Sir Francis Drake was a slave trader.
Okay. Thank you. We'll make sure
Thank
that
you.
information is distributed. Is there anyone else, Allison?
Yes, we have one emailed public comment that came in from David Mahler that I'll read now. Dear Larkspur City Council members, thank you for your June 8th statement from the Larkspur City Council. It represents a good first step in what will be a long and challenging process of change. I have nothing but high regard for the Central Marin Police Authority, CMPA. At the same time, in light of what we begin to learn from the murder of George Floyd and numerous other recent examples of police brutality toward people of color, it seems vital to review CMPA's mission, policies, and procedures from the perspective of what can we learn and how can we do better. As one of the 3 JPA entities, Larkspur, Corte Madera, and San Anselmo, that manage CMPA, I'd like to request the Larkspur City Council direct its 2 representatives on the Police Council to have that council commission an evaluation by an independent third party to identify where CMPA's missions, policies, and procedures, as well as its funding and budgeting, can more closely align with best practices from a progressive community services perspective. Clearly, such evaluation must include outreach to and input from people of color in our community and beyond. Once opportunities for improvement are identified and reviewed and refined through a public process, they should be implemented. I am sending this same request to all 3 JPA entities. Sincerely, David Mahler, Larkspur.
Thank you, David, for that. And listen in a little bit more about our announcement about the Police Council's upcoming meeting regarding that. Any other comments?
All right, and I'm just giving one last check for any incoming public comment, and at this time there is none.
Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you for being patient through this process of public comment that we're trying to do by a Zoom meeting. So that brings us to item number 3, which is a presentation and proclamation, and we have none. So moves us to 4, which is the consent calendar. And we have one item, which is item 4.6, that will need to be pulled and an explanation by our city attorney. But are any members of the city council want to pull any item from the consent calendar for discussion?
If I could, Madam Mayor, I had a question about the, to which resolution it was, about the chamber. So it's 4.3. So could we just pull that and have a discussion about that?
Is there anyone else who any other member of the council who would like to pull an item? Seeing none, is there anyone from the public, Allison, that would like to pull an item?
I see no one requesting to pull an item.
Okay, so we have 4.3 and 4.6. Let's open the discussion question you have for 4.3, Scott.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is, I understand that we normally give money to the Chamber of Commerce. I was hoping there'd be some type of explanation or I could have some understanding of what that money goes to. Is it just a check for them to use as they want? Is there any reporting back to us about how the money's being used? I just know that in our budget crisis that we have right now, even though we're reducing the amount, I just want to make sure every dollar is being spent wisely, and whether we're better off, giving that $20,000 directly to businesses, or to the chamber. Like I said, I just want to understand it a little better, what that money goes towards.
Dan, would you like to speak to how the reporting process works?
Sure, I'll be happy to, Madam Mayor. So the agreement is between the city and the chamber, and the city has every year given the chamber goals as to what it would like to see done. And then a couple of things happen in a typical year. First off, the president of the board of the chamber signs off on invoices from their executive director that are then sent to me. So he validates that the work that their executive director is invoicing the city was done. So that's one check that we put in place to make sure that there's performance actually occurring under the contract. The second thing is the chamber executive director typically reports to the council 4 to 6 times a year during a council meeting. 2 things happened that interfered with that happening on a regular basis this year. One was there was a turnover in the director and it was vacant for a bit, and so there wasn't any report done during the early part of the fiscal year. And then with COVID and the transition to online, we just haven't had an opportunity yet to bring the new executive director in front of the council to make a report. At this time, the director has been attending the Marin Recovers meetings on behalf of the Larkspur business community and then pushing information out from those meetings. She's also been instrumental in the fundraising effort that's been done to raise money for the business community that the city and the county and a number of private entities have contributed to. And she's also been, during all of this, just trying to reach out to different members to find out what they need so that she can act as a liaison to me and my staff. In a normal year where they could have events, you'd have more direct interaction and you'd have more enumerated list of things that the chamber had done, but with the restrictions of stay at home, they haven't had the opportunity to put on those events.
Does that make it?
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Clear?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with it, and I'm fine approving it with the understanding that there will be some type of reporting to the council moving forward of how that money is being spent before we come to this decision again next year. It sounds like that's in place. It just hasn't happened yet for various reasons. I'm fine with that, and with that in mind, I will unpull it or whatever we do to say I'm okay with it.
And Mayor Way, this is Kevin Herhoff. If I could just chime in a little bit, since I'm kind of the liaison for the city on the board and a member of the board there, the chamber board. This has been a period of time of transition for the chamber, and our new executive director, Julie Sorbetto, has been working day and night to bring together our business community in ways that we haven't really experienced in the past. So I really want to commend her for those efforts. We have reduced her budget. It's a challenge for her to continue to operate because of reduced resources, but she's doing a great job. She's put together a GoFundMe effort, which has raised money from a variety of different sources, and will be a great way of supporting our local business community. So we'll sort out some of the reporting things so that people are a little more aware of their activities. But I just wanted to reassure you all that, through my participation on the board and through Gabe's participation as well as kind of a backup on that, we are working very closely with the chamber in order to make them a more effective and helpful resource for our community.
Okay, thank you. Let's move to 4.6. Is there something you needed to mention about that, Skye?
Yeah, I just needed to make a brief announcement to comply with an amendment that was made to the Brown Act several years ago. And that requirement is that the city has to make a public announcement of any changes to the compensation of what is referred to as basically city executives, and that includes the city manager and department heads. And so I'm just making sure that the public knows that item 4.6 would result, if approved, in a decrease in the compensation of the city manager and department heads of 10%. And that's all.
Are there any questions of that? Okay, so it sounds like we've had our questions of 4.3 and 4.6 clarified. So I'll take a motion for approval of the consent calendar.
I'd like to move adoption of the consent calendar. It's Kevin.
Is there a second?
Second.
That's Gabe. All in favor? Do we have to do a roll call vote? Yes, we do. Forgot. Roll call vote, please, Allison.
Councilmember Candell,
I vote to approve.
Councilmember Hilmer,
Aye.
Councilmember Paulson. Oh, I see the verbal, or I see the yes, because I don't think we can hear you yet. I think there may be an audio issue, but I do see that you've given the thumbs up to the approval from Gabe Paulson. Vice Mayor Haroff.
Yes.
Mayor Way.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for everyone. So that brings us to number 5, which is the city manager's oral report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. I'd like to start with two more serious matters, and then we'll turn. There are some other things happening in the community. First, I want to let the community know, and I know there was an announcement about this up on the message while we were in closed session, that Chief Michael Norton of our Central Marin Police Authority is going to hold a webinar on Thursday, this Thursday, June 11. He's going to be online from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. And he's going to be providing answers to questions that the public has submitted to him ahead of time. And so they have opened up an email that you can submit questions to. And he's going to compile the answers to give folks as much information in 1 hour as is possible. And so if you go to our website, so cityoflarkspur.org, you'll find in the newsflash section the announcement with all the details of how you can submit a question and the Zoom coordinates for the webinar that will take place on Thursday. And also, this is actually a good follow-up to one of your public comments. The Police Council, which is 2 members of this City Council, 2 members of the San Anselmo City Council, and 2 members of the Corte Madera Council, sit as the Police Council and oversee the Central Marin Police Authority. They are working now to schedule a meeting to have a forum to discuss many of the issues that the community would like to discuss about policies and procedures, and to hear from us, and to hear what the public has to say, what they'd like us to know and what they're thinking. We don't have a date yet, but I expect we'll be able to make an announcement tomorrow or Wednesday at the latest about the day and time of that meeting. And we're going to agendize that meeting in a way that while the Police Council will be the body that you'll see as running the meeting, we'd like as many, if not all, of the council members of the 3 jurisdictions to attend and hear the important comments that we anticipate getting from our community. On a little bit lighter note, just want to remind folks we're still in the census season, and I know in this community we're really good about doing the census, but I feel compelled to remind everybody it does matter quite a bit. A lot of money is distributed to local government based on census data, so if you haven't had a chance to do it, we would ask that you please do. There are some links on our website to census resources. There's quite a bit on the county's website about census resources. And then lastly, I want to say congratulations to the Redwood High graduates who are finishing up their year this year with a week of activities. You know, it's been a year they'll always remember, and that's good, bad, and all that. Be Safe takes on a double meeting for all of them this week as they celebrate. Please be safe and be thoughtful. And we're very pleased to see that our lawn here at City Hall is decorated with some congratulations graduate signs, as are a lot of the downtown businesses. So congratulations to all, and I'll turn it back to the mayor.
Thank you very much for that. And just to follow up, if David Muller is still online, that was a public comment that he had earlier. This is addressing a police council forum for him, or for the community. Is there any?
Madam Mayor, if I could just interject to follow up on the city manager's last comments about graduation week.
Yeah.
So it's not just Redwood, it's actually Temascal as well. So we've got 2 high schools within our jurisdiction, and they're both doing graduations. And that's important to me because my daughter is graduating from both this week. We just picked up her cap and gown today. She has 2. So this is a big week. This is an important week for all of these high school graduates, and heading off into the world, whatever they may be doing. But it's heartwarming to know that we can still pull these things together as a community and make them happen.
So just to clarify, we have 3 high schools. We have Redwood High School, San Andreas High School, and
Yes, that's right.
so in our jurisdiction.
Well, my daughter's only at 2.
All right.
So I can only count for those.
Are there questions of the city manager's report from the city council? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to council members' reports and comments. If any council member has a report or comment that they would like to do, why don't you just raise your hand and I'll see it. Oh, Gabe. Gabe, go ahead. Oops. Unmute.
We can't hear you, Gabe.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks. Yeah, so briefly, 2 or 3 comments. One is I just wanted to report back that the Wildfire Safety JPA met on May 21st, and we're meeting again on June 18th. And again, I appreciate being able to, to represent, and also I really appreciate our city manager being a part of that. And currently, it's organizational. We're trying to elect the board, the bylaws, look at executives. The biggest thing to report back is it seems like a lot of the money is being spent in Central Marin, or they're beginning to spend, the allocated money. And it's nice to see the initiatives for Central Marin, the hires that we made in the vegetation management. So hopefully more on that later. And also for the mobile ad hoc committee, I reached out to those folks today and intend to do that again. I am asking for patience. We've all been quite busy here, but there are a few things to still work out. But specifically, they had asked for rent relief, of $75 a month, and that was postponed for 2 months purely on the side of the management there. So we appreciate that and hope that creates some space and opening to continue discussions. And lastly, I really wanted to thank the city manager and Chief Norton for the statement they made and the work they've done. I've gotten a lot of questions myself, and I was really proud of what was put out. So thank you for that.
Any other council member have a report? Scott, go ahead.
Thanks. A couple of quick things. First, I just wanted to let everyone know I went to the Marin City protest last Tuesday. It was inspiring. However, one of the issues were the sound system that they had was not, adequate for the crowd that they had. And it was difficult to hear. So I spoke to some community leaders in Marin City, confirmed that they could use a better sound system to let people's voices be heard. I had started a campaign to raise that money. I've been talking to Kate Sears with the county, who represents that district, who will hopefully be matching whatever donations are made. It's a GoFundMe page here, Marin. I think it's here, Marin City is the GoFundMe. So I will update everybody as soon as I have more information on that. And hopefully we get that done and provide that to them relatively soon. The other thing I also just wanted to mention on a completely separate note is due to our budget issues that are coming up, I have been contacted by people regarding a medical cannabis dispensary and how the revenues would affect our budget. And I know this will not be part of the budget we are doing right now, but I have been informed from some other dispensaries that a city could expect maybe $1 million from having a dispensary between the sales taxes and local taxes for 1 year. And I found that relatively enticing. And I just wanted to inform the council and anyone else who's listening that I would like to hopefully see that on the agenda shortly so we could discuss that, have a community forum, and see if that would be appropriate for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. I think we've spoken about the opportunity to put a workshop on sometime later in the summer after budget, and we'll be discussing a time we can agendize that workshop. Anyone else want to raise a hand? All right. Kevin, Vice Mayor Hoff, go ahead.
Yep. Just real quick. We've already talked a lot about so far about the work that the Chamber of Commerce is doing, but just another shout out for the reinvigorated effort that the Chamber has been pursuing to support our business community. Traditionally they've had a number of events that ordinarily would occur during the summer The wine stroll is the big one in the middle of the summertime. That may not happen. But they're working very hard to try to figure out other ways to support the business community, and I'm very happy to be a part of that effort. Just two other things real quick. One, the other day I participated or joined a PG&E program, online program, to help us all start thinking about the likeliness of public safety power shutoffs, PS events coming up in this fall. They're going to happen. I think PG&E has been doing as best it can under difficult circumstances with its bankruptcy proceeding and other challenges. But they're going to be working hard to avoid some of the consequences of power shutoffs that we experienced last year. You may remember we had a shutoff that was countywide at one point for several days. That was really, according to PG&E, that was the result of unique circumstances that occurred at that time that are not likely to occur again. So they're working very hard to reduce the number of customers that are impacted by these events by 1/3 compared to what they did in 2019. Also trying to implement strategies to restore service in a more prompt fashion than they were able to do last year. And as importantly as anything else, improve their communication strategies so that the community knows what's going on when these events happen. So they're working hard. They've got a lot of work still to do. I think we need to support their efforts in being successful because it's in all of our interests. But I guess my point is, with all the other challenges that we have in society right now, we are going to be facing likely some serious wildfire risks going forward in this year. And that will undoubtedly result in additional power shutoffs by PG&E. And we all need to be anticipating that and prepared for it in a prudent way. The other thing that I wanted just to mention, and this is kind of related to the chamber, but not so much. I've been working with the Lark Theater, which is a great Larkspur institution, which is currently not operating. That they've been trying as best they can to kind of maintain their presence within their community through efforts to put on drive-in movie programming in different venues in our community. They've already made some arrangements. I don't have the dates, but there are going to be 3 nights during the course of this summer. I think one's coming up later this month at Bon Air Shopping Center, where they're going to kind of cordon off the parking lot and let people come in on a limited basis and do some family-oriented movie programming. They're also looking hard at other venues. We were hoping we could work something out with College of Marin, which has a great parking lot, but unfortunately, the college needs that for staging for some construction activities that they've got going on, so that's not going to work out. So the theater is looking at other possible venues around the community, and we'll see how that happens. But I just want to do a real shout out for the folks at the Lark Theater for really trying to do something that's culturally oriented in support of our community. Hopefully that'll all work out. That's it.
Dan Hilmer?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is more of a personal comment to follow up on the information provided by the city manager regarding our Central Marin Police Department and the forum to be held in a couple of days. I just don't want it to be lost in the dynamic conditions we're experiencing, that our community has a long, proud legacy of community policing that involves working with our residents, encouraging our kids, providing the police department as a resource as opposed to a threatening sort of personality in the community. I'll just convey one anecdote that I think it expresses this spirit. Many of the police captains who work here for a long time, many of them, their proudest achievement, and I'll just recount one. Upon his retirement, he told me his proudest achievement was in the 20 years of serving, he had never pulled his weapon. I think that's very valuable insight to the approach and philosophy that we have here in the Twin Cities and the Central Marin Police Department. And I think that goes a long way to help us in the current environment. So I look forward to attending the forum in a couple of days, and I'm really proud of our public safety rank and file, as well as the leadership there, because they've provided many decades of moral and ethical leadership that we should be very proud of. And I know this is a tough time, but we should never forget that we've been at this a while, and it takes a long time to develop the kind of golden relationship that the public safety workers have with our community. We don't want that lost.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Seeing another, I guess it's me. I just wanted to thank the city staff and the council for working hard this weekend on really a thoughtful statement that we've posted on our website. I think I really appreciate everyone's contribution to how important it was for us to articulate our concern of what's happening now and the conversation, how we can open it up and move it forward in our community. So I encourage everyone who may be listening to read that, and if you have questions, you can further reach out to us about it. And then lastly, we have 2 openings on our Planning Commission, and whoever's, we really need to encourage applicants to our Planning Commission. It's a very essential role in a community, and it helps guide housing policies, it helps guide where things are developed and what opportunities there are for enhancing inclusive communities. The Planning Commission's a really important part of that. So anyone listening or anybody who knows someone who might be interested, please reach out to the city clerk for an application.
Madam Mayor, just to echo that, we have 2 of the members of our current council are former planning commissioners, and I think both of us would agree that it's a very rewarding experience that we've both been able to have in our own backgrounds. And it's really a leadership opportunity within the community and a way to engage folks in a very direct and productive way. So I'll be reaching out to some folks that I think might be good candidates, and I really encourage everyone who's listening to this call to think about those who might be willing to participate in that role.
All right, thank you everyone for your reports. Let's move on to item number 7, which is public hearing. 7.1 is the fiscal year 2020-2021 capital improvement program and budget. Do we have a staff report? Oh, there's Julian. Hello, Julian.
Good evening. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council, members of the public. So we do have tonight a public hearing for adoption of the proposed fiscal year 2021 capital improvement program. I think Allison has a PowerPoint presentation to upload. We did have a workshop on May 20th where we reviewed the different funding sources and the projects. And this is kind of a truncated version of that presentation. I'm available to drill down into any of the details that were included in the workshop that I haven't carried through into this presentation, but I will just quickly go over the highlights of the capital improvement program as proposed. There are a couple of small changes that I'll mention as we move through here. So we have our 3 categories of projects. The first is building projects, and as shown last time, we only have 1 active building project and it's not funded at this time, and those are improvements to Fire Station 16 over on Barry Way. So there's no proposed funding at this time. And then the next slide shows the proposed parks projects. This is where we have 1 change from the presentation that we provided on the 20th. and that's actually a de-allocation of funds. So as we mentioned before, we were holding off on some of our parks projects, deferring them out a year. We actually funded Niven Park improvements last year. So this year we'll be taking $90,000 that we funded previously out of that project. We hope to be able to put that money back in next year to continue with the Niven Park project. But as things stand at this point, we're proposing to take that money out of that project for this year and then put it in again next year. So that's a change that was not shown on the 20th slide. And so the next 3 slides are all of our transportation, drainage, and utilities projects. And so there's some minor changes here too. Those first 4 projects that you saw in red are the new projects. The rest of the projects are carryovers. This first page is all of the projects that are proposed to get allocations this year. And then as we go down to the next slide, there is one change here, the Larkspur Marina Lagoon Discharge Pipe project. We've been able to fine tune some of the accounting on that project, and we've identified that we actually need another $23,909 to close out that project. So we're showing that as a funding need in 2021. That was not included in the last presentation. And then the last slide for the TDU projects, these are all future projects that have not started yet. So there's no funding allocations this year, and you're seeing dollar values for budget in years 2 through 5 in the CIP. An item that was on your consent agenda tonight was to close out 5 projects that are complete, and those projects are listed here. Those are not included in the CIP moving forward. The work has been completed and the accounting has been completed. Money has been added to these projects if they were short, and money has been taken out of these projects if they had money left in them, but they are no longer carried over in the capital program moving forward. This is kind of as much as I can show it, the CIP in one page. So these are the allocations. This is what you're being asked to approve tonight. These are fiscal year 2021 allocations for each project, and they're shown by funding source. And again, we've got a change from the last time you saw this, and we were showing that Niven, we take $90,000 out of Niven. And then the very bottom item is the Marina Lagoon Discharge Pipe, the 23,000 we would be adding. All the other numbers here are the same. And this slide has been corrected during the 20th presentation. The last 2 columns were transposed, so that's been corrected with this slide. And that shows that the total allocations that you're being requested this evening through the next year's capital improvement program is $18,248,254, split up among the various funds, as you see them there, from the Parks Fund on the left all the way through to grants and restricted revenue. And then the next slide is all of those different funds added up. So park development has actually a negative allocation this year. We're putting money back in that fund. And then the bridge fund, gas tax, and the various other funds that are used for each of the projects. And again, the bottom line here is all of those add up to the $18.2 million, which is the fund request for fiscal year 2020-21. And then this next slide is just another summary. Every year we propose a 5-year capital improvement program. We like to project out the next 4 years worth of projects as best we can. But again, you're only approving the funding for this one coming fiscal year. So if you take all the projects that we're looking at over our current 5-year span, with this being year 1 through 24-25, there's $82 million worth of projects in that 5-year CIP. A lot of that is from the bridge, and our paving program take up a big chunk of that $82 million. And that's the overview of the CIP. As I mentioned, we had a lot more background information in the presentation on the 20th that I didn't go into, but I'm happy to drill down into any of that, and then also take any questions. And then this is also a public hearing, so we can offer the public an opportunity to weigh in also.
Okay, thank you very much, Julian. I'll start with asking if any of the council members have a question of this presentation. Of course, we've had much of this presented to us before, but if there are questions of this new presentation, why don't you raise a hand? All right, thank you for that explanation, Julian, and the project summaries are very complete. So since this is a public hearing, I'd like to see if there's anyone in the audience who either has emailed in or is raising their hand because they're listening to this, have any questions about the proposed capital improvement program for fiscal year 2020/2021. Allison, can you see if there's anyone raising a hand?
Thank you. I'm looking for any raised hands at this moment and checking our public comment email, and I see no public comment.
Okay, so I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the council. Any further questions of Public Works Director Julian Skinner? Oh, Scott, go ahead.
Thanks, Julian. Just a quick question. I know we talked about this last time, but as I was going through the presentation here, I couldn't quite understand with all the different funding sources, which of those, I know we spoke last time about which of those, if we chose not to do it, could be used for general fund purposes and which are specifically required to be used for the projects here. I didn't see any of these as the general fund. So does that mean all of them are specific use only?
Yeah, so there are no what I would call raw general fund funded projects where the money's coming straight from the general fund. I think what I mentioned last time was that the gas tax can be used for maintenance purposes on streets other than we typically use it for our bigger projects. I think of the money that we do get from the state, there is a portion of the gas tax that already goes to fund street maintenance operations. There's no limit on that other than what we can use. We have historically taken a portion of that and put it towards the maintenance crew and taken the bulk of it and put it towards our capital projects. But to the extent that we have maintenance operations that are on the streets, we could, in theory, transfer more of that gas tax money to the maintenance side, to the operations side, to pay for maintenance operations versus capital projects. And in essence, that would free up general fund monies for other activities.
Thank you.
Any further questions about the CIP? Okay, seeing none, we have a resolution 37/20 of the City Council, City of Larkspur, adopting the 5-year capital improvement program for fiscal year 2020 and 2021 through 2024/25. Who would like to move that resolution?
I'd be happy to move the resolution, Madam Mayor.
And is there a second?
I'll second it.
Stan Hilmer seconded it. Allison, will you do the roll call?
Councilmember Kandel,
I'll approve it.
Councilmember Hilmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Paulson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Haroff,
Yes.
Mayor Way.
Yes. Thank you, Julian, very much for all the hard work you put into that and your team.
Yes.
Thank you.
I see you out on the Bon Air Bridge occasionally when I walk by with your hard hat on, so I know you boots on the ground out there. All right, that brings us to public hearing B, which is adoption of the fiscal year budget 2020/2021 budget. And for those maybe listening in the public or watching this later, Larkspur goes through about a 4-meeting process in which we discuss our budget for the upcoming fiscal year. This has been a very, very challenging year for us, and we have a lot of uncertainty as to some of the future funding outcomes, but we have a lot of really thoughtful tools that have been thought through by not only the council but our city manager Dan Schwartz and our finance director, Kathy Oram. And I really am appreciative of how they jumped directly into helping us keep our financial stability and boat afloat during this COVID-19. So to that, we do have our city budget, which is published online. There has been a lot of interest in finding out how cities fund certain programs. I would encourage everyone to pay attention to how their city funds programs and participate in the process along the way. And Larkspur has a long and a transparent process that we engage in every spring, and this is the culmination of it today. So with that, I'd like to launch a staff report, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Like Julian before me, I plan to give a more abridged presentation tonight, and I encourage folks who really want to go through the detail of what we're facing in our budget to visit the recordings of the last two meetings we did. I think between the two meetings, close to 4 hours of budget work in preparation for this public hearing tonight. With that said, I do want to take you through a brief summary of where we are and what the budget reflects, particularly for folks who may be visiting us who haven't had the chance to see all of that material. A lot of the material you received in your last two budget sessions is encapsulated in the written narratives that you'll find in the draft budget book. We were pushing hard to get to press. We know there's some typos here and there that we're going to still be cleaning up in the book. You can adopt the budget tonight, and if you spotted some things that need to be cleaned up, feel free to shoot us a note and we'll add that to our administrative cleanup list. None of the numbers need to be changed, but we noticed a comma missing here and things missing there that will change in the narrative. I want to acknowledge that Administrative Services Director Kathy Orm's here with me to answer any questions that you have, and she is really the brains of the outfit when we do the budget. I just get to be the front person and take some of the credit here. So with that, Alice is going to give me control of the screen, and I'm going to do a brief presentation for you.
And are you able to see a share screen box at the bottom of your screen?
I do. I think I'm trying it now. Let's see. Does that work?
It did. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, so this is the proposed budget and the service levels that are tied to it for the fiscal year 2021. So, oops, okay. Summary that this, first of all, we are a every year budget agency. Some agencies do 2-year budgets. But this year, Kathy and I have really talked through and thought through our modeling with a lot of thought to the challenge over 2 years. Everything we're reading and talking about tells us that cities are going to have a 2-year challenge to reach recovery from the effects of the COVID-19 recession. Cities that are facing heavy tourism losses may be looking at a 3-year recovery. Tourism does play a role for us, but it's not to the degree it is in some other cities. Our strategy for the current budget that we have in front of you, fiscal year 2021, we've incorporated some one-time opportunities. Specifically, we were able, during a refinancing of our pension debt, we were able to arrange it so that we're only making interest-only payments this year and next year. So that was a one-time reduction in our expenditures that we could capture in this budget. And in addition, as you approved the consent calendar, we've reduced payroll costs, not just for our active employees, but the council approved a program to incentivize retirement and essentially accelerate attrition. That program resulted in 6 employees electing to retire. Those positions won't be filled. We also had some vacancies that we were in the process of recruiting for. We froze those positions. The general fund had 35 positions last year allocated in the budget. This budget proposes a staff of 28 funded positions. So that's a fifth of our workforce that we're reducing for the fiscal year. And then let's be blunt, this is a deficit budget. We are suggesting to you that you approve a budget that has a deficit that we currently project at $600,000. That's based on our assumptions, particularly on the revenue side. And so that $600,000 will need to come out of the general fund reserve. The general fund reserve is more than capable of absorbing that loss at this time, because by council policy, the general fund reserve must have at least 25% of operating budget in it, and we can meet that number with this budget, and we met it with last year's budget, so we've been able to stay strong there. It's important that we have a strong general fund reserve because this strategy relies less on the general fund reserve in fiscal year 2021 with the anticipation that it's probably our primary tool to survive fiscal year 21-22. So when you put it in that 2-year context, it explains some of the choices that we made this year to get us to June 30 of 21. And then we believe we'll have to draw much more heavily on our reserves to get us to June 30 of 22. We believe we can do this and still keep the city's cash flow manageable, and we can still remain healthy and solvent. But there are effects. There are effects on our service levels that we'll summarize briefly. I've shown this to you several times for the benefit of anybody who's with us who hasn't seen this before. We're making 4 key assumptions that are driving our understanding of what's going to happen with our budget. We are actually allowing that property tax is going to go up. The Marin County assessor has a great track record for projecting property tax, and the assessor feels that property tax will remain strong in the coming fiscal year, so we've accepted that projection and incorporated it into our budget. It's the only revenue stream where we're feeling really strong right now. We have sales tax going down by 40% in this budget. Mostly that's due to the fact that our sales tax is heavily tied to the service industry, restaurants, retail, small retail, gas stations, a lot of the businesses that have been hit very hard by the COVID-19 situation. Hopefully they'll slowly come back online and we'll see them being more robust in the coming months. But based on the trends we've seen and what we think is reasonable to expect over the next year, we're keeping that sales tax number at 40% of the prior year budget. The big hit to the city among our revenue streams is our transient occupancy tax. That's our hotel tax. Most experts are suggesting that hotel tax will be 60 to 80% reduced over the prior fiscal year. We went with the 80% mark. I can tell you, Kathy was lamenting to me the first COVID-19 TOT money arrived the other day. It was $2,400. We're accustomed to seeing significantly more money than that. So we're probably spot on in terms of our concerns with what's going to happen here. And then, as I've said, as a caveat with all of the presentations, probably the most debatable assumption in our budget is we do have planning and building fees down. That's because we don't know what people are going to be willing to spend money on, or whether they're willing to necessarily have people in their homes doing work over this period. We're just assuming a lot of the activity will go to some of the smaller building fees in particular. For example, right now we're actually really busy in building, but we're issuing things like solar permits, which are not big revenue fee generators for the city. A lot of detail in your budget book about the general fund revenues. This is the pie chart of it. And we always talk about being a property tax town, but usually that property tax piece of the pie is sitting more around 75% of the pie. So you can see it's a bigger piece of the revenue pie now. given these drops in the other revenue streams. So we should be really glad we are in an area where property taxes expected to remain strong during this overall economic downturn. One historical note that I'd like to point out, because it really speaks volumes to how well our two main shopping centers have transitioned over the past several years. And it wasn't that long ago that I was celebrating with the council hitting 1.8 million in sales tax. I remember giving that presentation being stunned we had hit that mark. Now that's the mark, that's 60% of what we've been seeing. And that's a real testament to the change that happened at Larkspur Landing with Country Mart, Marin Country Mart, and the transformation at the Bon Air shopping center. Those two have been big economic engines for us. And we have also, over the last few years, seen some really healthy business-to-business sales that occur out of our office parks. So we've really come to enjoy having that nice piece of sales tax and hope that our businesses will rebound and we'll see that piece of the pie growing again. Always good to see the other pieces of the pie. As you can see, public safety dominates our pie, as it does for most cities. As the council knows and the public may not know, since those are joint powers authorities, we don't, in these sessions, dive into their budgets. The police agency handles its budget, the fire agency handles its budget. They have their own hearings, and then they convey to us what our cost is for the year. That said, the management team for both police and fire, of which I am a member, asked our chiefs to work with us to make it so that the price that we would be charged in this fiscal year would be as close to what we paid in the prior fiscal year as possible. So essentially flat cost in those two agencies. And they did a remarkable job of accomplishing that. The police cost, I believe, is almost exactly flat, and the fire is a few percentage points. So they both worked really hard to find ways in their agencies to hold costs down or move money around so that they could provide us with those flat charges for this year as we deal with our budgets. There are going to be impacts, though, because we've had to reduce our staffing level. As I said, we're going from 35 to 28 funded positions between these two fiscal years. And I just want to walk folks through this. We talked about this at our last meeting. We are committed to maintaining emergency response. That's a high priority for our council and our community. It's easy to forget that our Public Works Maintenance Division is the third pillar of emergency response, along with police and fire. These are the folks that are out protecting the community when there's floods by taking care of storm drains and other issues around the community. These are the folks that go turn the traffic lights off when there's a power shut off, so that when the power comes back on, they don't suddenly come back with traffic lights, even though there's stop signs everywhere. These are the folks that when we have smoke, they help us set up clean air spaces. So we're committed to make sure that our emergency response won't be impacted. But we will see a reduction in our maintenance crew's ability to deal with the parks and the medians and the landscaping. Those 10% cut that you implemented tonight for our maintenance crew, they'll be working one day less each week. And so as a result of that furlough, they'll get to things less frequently than they do now. Our planning division, we normally have 3 funded positions in planning. We're going to have those 3 positions, but one of the positions is going to be asked to do duties both in planning and building. So working in both divisions this year. That will slow us down in terms of our ability to respond to inquiries and may slow down some of our in-house processing. We have procedures where applicants can pay to expedite their projects, so we may see applicants who make the choice to pay that premium so they can expedite their projects. We also are bringing code enforcement in-house. We have been outsourcing that to a third party. As I explained to the council, that's a significant savings by reducing that code enforcement contract, but it does mean the staff will now need to do that work directly, and that is again spreading them a little thinner, so we'll be a little slower in our response time there. We will acknowledge code enforcement complaints and then prioritize them and get to them as best we can. Building division, we have, as I said, we've had to cut some in the positions, so we have somebody who's gonna be working both in planning and building, and then we'll have one dedicated permit processor, permit technician as we call it. So there'll probably be some longer response times in that area as we try to move through our paperwork. And we're already feeling that. We actually, as I said, are very busy right now with roofing permits, solar permits. A lot of folks are having that kind of work done right now. And we're backed up, and because we're already making these transitions to these lower service levels because of attrition, we're struggling to turn them around as quickly as we're used to. In administration, both because of the COVID situation and because of what we're seeing in the world around us, the demand for our communication efforts to be even stronger is very high. We've worked hard over the last several years to improve communication with the public, but we need to do even more. And each time we think we have a handle on the latest way folks want to be communicated with, there's a new medium for us to explore. So we're going to actually move some resources there, and we are going to centralize communication and provide that support throughout the city. The challenge with administration doing that is the same staff that'll be tasked with those assignments are the staff members that I rely on to do a lot of the special issues and projects for the city. And so we'll be less available to do that. The council's been talking, for example, about a cannabis workshop. I know Councilmember Candell is interested in that. Luckily, we did all that research a few years ago. We can update it. That's something we can manage and handle. If we were doing it from scratch, it'd probably take us a lot longer to put that material together right now. One of our biggest areas, it's been the hardest to figure out, is what to do in our library and recreation area. So we are forming one department, a community services department, under this budget. Within that department, there will be two divisions, a library division and a recreation division. Through attrition, the recreation director is retiring. And so the director of the library, Franklin Escobedo, he will become the community services director, and he will manage both divisions. So his time will be a little spread between two divisions, and it may reduce his ability to focus on either one of them to the extent that, that those divisions are used to. We've also made significant cuts of the 7 positions that we've reduced. A lot of them are in these two divisions. That's partly because with the COVID restrictions, there's limited ability for us to serve the public. So it made sense to do those cuts. But it also means we're going to have fewer folks to be responsive. And so we ask for folks to bear with us, and we'll be open less. Even after COVID-19 restrictions are lifted, we're just not going to be able to be open to the public as much as we would like to. In recreation, it's very similar. Reduced responsiveness. Programming is going to be very limited due to COVID. We have some vendors who are interested in doing camps with us, but not a lot. And that's because it's going to be difficult for them to make it work financially. So that's going to be a struggle, and we're going to work with them to make it happen as best we can. And then rental opportunities are limited. For the summer, we're accustomed to seeing a lot of rental activity out in our picnic area and our table area, and right now those are restricted under COVID. I hear picnic tables are one of the next topics, so we may be getting some new direction there, but we don't anticipate seeing a lot of rental activity. We don't expect to do many, if any, city managed events. This is an area of significant discussion in the Marin Recovers process. When and what will civic events look like? But for the time being, we don't have any plans to do any city managed events. And then, like I said, we now have one director, so his time will be split between two divisions. Before I go to council questions and discussions, I did want to also acknowledge, I focus here in this presentation heavily on the general fund, which is the balance of what we do. There are some impacts in other funds that need to be acknowledged and are discussed in the written portion of the budget book. The most significant of that is that the city operates an enterprise fund called the Twin Cities Child Care Fund. We've been the city employer of record for the Twin Cities Child Care Center since the 1970s. This is the center that provides preschool services to children in the community and also provides after-school care to kids at Neil Cummins Elementary. With the COVID restrictions, the business model that the fund has operated under is not sustainable. Staff made several attempts to try to come up with a business model that might work, but came to the conclusion that it wasn't something they thought they could make work and still run a net neutral operation. One of the things about an enterprise fund is that it needs to pay for itself, and they were concerned that it didn't seem like it could do that. They worked very hard on that with me. We tried a lot of different scenarios and just couldn't pencil that out. Some of those employees subsequently have decided to take advantage of our retirement program that we offered. And we've come to the decision that we're going to cease operation of the child care center. So we'll now start figuring out with our landlord, the school district, they own the land underneath the building. We're going to try to figure out what the future is, but we do not anticipate the child care center operating under the city's direction in the foreseeable future. There's also the summer school fund. We aren't running the Super Cool Summer School because of COVID this year. So you sort of had a fund that's gone dormant for the year. And then the other significant thing to note among all the funds, I think, is that Measure B is an area we certainly are monitoring with some concern because it's a sales tax funded operation. But we've done so well in sales tax that the reserve in the Measure B fund is in excess of 1 year's payment of the bonds that we've taken out. So we already have enough money in that fund to pay the bonds in fiscal year 2021. And all the revenue we get during this coming fiscal year will help us build up the reserve we will need to pay the bonds in the subsequent year. So we believe we're on a 2-year cycle to comfortably manage Measure B. And the other thing about Measure B to bear in mind is when folks shop on the internet, Measure B is charged on those directly. So Measure B, in all likelihood, that sales tax will outperform the base sales tax during this period as people are making a lot of internet purchases. So those are the funds I wanted to highlight. The entire budget book is before the council and the public, and we are available to answer any questions. This is a public hearing, Madam Mayor, on the various resolutions that are before you.
Okay, that's a lot of material. Thank you for that presentation. Of course, we've been doing this now for 3 or 4 meetings, so a lot of it has been covered. But I would like to put it out first to the council if they have any additional questions about the budget and the presentation. Gabe, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. And thanks, Dan. I just wanted to, maybe for the public's benefit, outline the very high level, looking at page 12 of the budget book, because there is so many details. Essentially, we have the 2.4 million shortfall, which has been plugged by about $1 million in staff reductions, $700K in pension obligation bonds, and then there's the remaining category. I thought perhaps you could just, restate what I said to make sure it's correct, and maybe clarify where the reserve funds come in and the transfer occupancy tax. It seemed like those were the salient budget items from many of our discussions, and I just wanted to have that clear because it really does seem to summarize a lot of the work that was done.
So I think you're asking me to emphasize again sort of the tools we're using to bridge the gap. Is that?
Yeah, and more so, maybe that was a little bit too long. More specifically, maybe just I couldn't quite trace the transfer occupancy tax and reserves. So going to page 12 of the budget book, there's
so
transfer under 25,000.
Right. So for folks who have the budget book in front of them, on page 12, the page is labeled the General Fund Overview. And you'll note that down in transfer in from other funds, we're showing a transfer of 625,000 from other funds. 525,000 of that transfer is from the Transient Occupancy Tax Fund, the Hotel Tax Fund. For background, for folks who haven't had a chance to see this material, for every dollar in hotel tax that the city gets, we put 10 cents into the TOT fund, and we put 90 cents into the general fund. There were several years, the purpose of the TOT fund is to invest back in the business community, to help the business community. There were several years where, for a variety of reasons, the city didn't expend a lot of money out of the TOT fund, and as a result, it built up a sizable reserve. It built up about 5 to 6 years worth of typical activity reserve for that fund, which was far too much. And we were actually starting to figure out what we were going to do with that when COVID came around. So it was fortuitous that we had that money, because we can make that transfer out of that reserve and plug a lot of the missing money from the fact that the hotel is not going to perform very well in this current fiscal year by taking that money out of the TOT fund. We're still leaving enough money in reserve in the TOT fund to cover more than a year's worth of activity that's typical for that fund, so we'll be fine there. The other thing you asked me to highlight again, I think, was the pension obligation bond refinance situation. So the city, back in October, started the process to issue pension obligation funds to reduce our long-term interest on our pension debt. And over the lifetime of our pension debt, which is 25 years for the purposes of this discussion, we're reducing that interest payment, those interest payments, by about $9 million. When we went to structure the pension bond issuance, our municipal advisor, our financial team, pointed out to us that we could still realize $9 million in savings over the lifetime of those bonds if we did a little creative work in terms of the payment schedule. And it would actually allow us to go to interest-only payments in this fiscal year and next fiscal year. And so what we essentially did was we moved our, you can see this on that same page if you go up to the very first expense line. You can see that we amended our budget for the year we're currently in, and we anticipated paying over $1 million to PERS. We were anticipating paying close to 1.1 million to PERS in this fiscal year's budget, the 2021, the proposed budget. With the pension obligation bond refinancing and going to the interest only, we're only going to pay $359,000 this year. So we've essentially manufactured a $700,000 reduction in expenditures. That's an awesome relief to the general fund, and I'm so glad that we happen to have had that in the pipeline when we were working on it. Going to our 2-year discussion, the hard part is we captured that savings now, so we can't capture it again. It just stays sort of fixed at 359. So that's just something to know. That's why I keep labeling it a one-time opportunity, because it brought that expenditure cost down one time. But it'll stay at that level in the next fiscal year, which is is some relief for us. Is there anything else you wanted me to cover, Councilmember Paulson?
No, thank you for that. The one point I was trying to make is you said a few times, let's be blunt, this is a deficit budget. I just want to get clarity, and I think it's really good for the public to hear. What I'm thinking is out of a $4 million reserve, it's maybe only 100,000 that we're drawing out of that reserve, or 4%, and we've plugged over 50% of the budget through the pension obligation bond and the transfer occupancy tax. Is that correct, or am I wrong in the numbers there?
It's a little hard to describe it that way. Kathy and I would think of it this way. We had a revenue level that we were comfortable projecting for the last fiscal year, and for this fiscal year, we expect 2.7 million less in revenue. So our task was to reduce expenditures by that same number, 2.7 million. And we weren't able to do that. So what we were able to do is use our payroll adjustments to reduce expenditures by about $1 million. And then we were able to capture that $700,000 savings on the pension obligation bond. So that get us to 1.7. And then we're making the TOT transfer to pick up more of that savings. And then we're just anticipating that the general fund will have to cover whatever the balance ends up being. It's a true up situation, right? We're telling you it's our projection, but the general fund's on the hook for whatever the true cost ends up being at the end of the year. I'm going to hope that our track record of bringing you conservative budgets means that that true up number will actually be smaller, because Kathy and I are often aggressively conservative, even when we're doing a depressing situation like this one. And in fact, it's not the first time we've brought you a deficit budget. The difference is I brought you deficit budgets before where we're talking about well less than 1%. And I've assured you I can find that throughout the year, but I'm not prepared in June to tell you where I'm going to find it, because I need the year to move along before I can find it. This year, I'm telling you, I expect there will be a deficit. When the year's over, we should anticipate that we'll be in the red. And we think that the magnitude that we can expect is around 600,000.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there other questions of the city manager before I open the public hearing? Yes, go ahead, Scott.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just quickly, I'm sorry, Dan. I'm trying to understand the police and fire situation with our budget. It sounded like you were saying that we have no control over the amount of money that we're spending on police and fire at this point. If hypothetically there's a situation where we have to take some steps in that regard, are you telling us that that's not possible at this point?
No, I'm sorry if I misconveyed it. What I was trying to say is, in this budget hearing, we're not delving into the details of their budgets. But if any member agency were struggling to actually make the required payments to the authority, we would have to open up budget proceedings at the authority to sort that out and give the member agency a chance to explain what its individual situation is that is resulting in it not being able to make its payments. So if the economy takes a devastating worse turn, we would open those conversations up.
Right. So I'm not talking about for this particular budget, but hypothetically next year, if there are budget issues, we would have an opportunity to say, hey, we need to revisit this. We can't just guarantee that, whatever it is, 50% of our budget or $9 million, whatever it happens to be, we have no control over that. Sorry, we would be able to revisit that and have some type of discussion or negotiation where that number would be in play. Is that right?
That's correct. And for the benefit, for your benefit and the benefit of the public, just to, so the budget process at the two authorities begins with the management team, which is myself and my counterparts. And we set the tone based on what we know our own budgets are starting to look like. So that if we, in this particular year, we said to them, we can't pay for an increase. You've got to figure out how to, there's not an increase. We may need to go to them if things are bad and say next year, we actually need you to bring the budget down. You know, I don't know how the circumstances will play out, but that's a scenario that might happen. Both of the both police and fire's labor contracts are cycling, so that next year is the year to have those conversations because the contracts are cycling to closure. So that's always an easier time to talk about these situations with labor. So
and also just to
see where we are.
And also just to be clear with the public and with others, those authorities and their board approved the budget for next year already at last month's board meetings. That presentation has been going on to the Central Marin Police Authority and the Central Marin Fire Authority boards. And that budget is will be posted, I assume, on their website so that people can take a look at what those budgets are also.
That's correct. Their budget is publicly available. Mayor Way and Vice Mayor Haroff happen to be your representatives on both those entities. So they contributed, they voted on the budget. And then the other thing just for the police happens to be that we are the administrative unit for the police authority. So Kathy Orm, who builds your budget, builds the police authority budget and knows it intimately well. So if there's a nickel to be found in that budget, she knows where it is.
Hey, thank you for that explanation. I appreciate it.
Are there other further questions about the budget before we open the public hearing? Okay, seeing none. Allison, I'd like to open the public hearing for comments and questions from the public in regards to fiscal year 2020/2021 budget.
And I'm looking for any raised hands at the moment from our attendees. There's no email public comment, and at this moment, no one wishes to give any public comment.
Okay, I think we've given sufficient timing since we've been working on this issue now for a little while. So I think I'll close public hearing and bring it back to the council for any further questions. Seeing none, it looks like we have 6 resolutions to adopt. We have 2 choices. One is to adopt them as a package, unless someone would like to adopt them as individual resolutions. Is there any member of the council who would like to adopt them individually? Okay, seeing none, and I checked in with our city clerk and our city attorney that we could adopt them as a whole. Resolution 3820, 3920, 4020, 41/20, 42/20, and 43/20. Allison, is that sufficient for you for the record, or do you need them read off?
Thank you. I have all those resolutions noted.
Okay. Who would like to move those 6 resolutions that were just cited?
I'd be happy
I'd
to
be
make
honored
that
to move
motion.
I think Scott.
I will second it.
Scott
Yeah,
got the first, and that's seconded by Vice Mayor Haroff.
Sure.
We'll have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Kandel,
Yes.
Councilmember Hilmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Paulson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Haroff,
Yes.
Mayor Way.
Yes. Thank you very much. And Kathy, you didn't say a word down there, but I know you're listening. I want to say thank you for your hard work on this matter. And I appreciate your pinching of pennies and everyone else in the staff who is working on this. It's a very challenging time, and I hate that euphemism, challenging time, but we seem to be needing to be very nimble on our feet, and I'm proud of the team that can be so nimble.
And Madam Mayor, if I could just echo your comments there about Kathy. Kathy works very, very hard to support our finances within the city, and along with Dan. It's a source of pride, I think, for all of us that we're in as good a shape as we are, because lots of communities are not right now. So kudos to both of them for all their hard work.
Thank you all for the good kudos. I have a lot of support, which makes my job a whole lot easier from Dan and other admin support team that actually helped giving the budget a new face this year. So kudos to Dan's assistant and our admin assistant now that they did a great job on the budget new look and did a tremendous job of helping me out on that as well. It's hard to put it all together for a meeting.
I see Shannon's online as an attendee, so I hope she heard that.
Me too.
All right, that brings us to item number 8, business item 8.1, update on city activities in response to COVID-19. This is a standing.
So
go ahead.
Yeah, so Madam Mayor, just a few things. Just wanted to, earlier you had a speaker who commented about the protest that occurred on Friday, and I really want to acknowledge and thank the police department, police authority for handling that in a gentle way. They were present. Folks knew they were in the vicinity. They were not involved. They didn't, I don't think they impaired folks' ability to participate. A lot of folks may not have even realized they were in the area watching. But they have been doing that on all the protests that have been occurring, and there's been several in Larkspur, partly to make sure folks are safe. We had a wonderful display of protest and civil pride as folks marched from Marin Primary up on Magnolia to downtown. There's a lot of families, and it's not safe to be halfway into the street. And so the police just gently showed up and said, you know, you need to be on the sidewalk to be safe. We don't want you to get hit by a car. And so going to what Councilmember Hilmer had said about the approach that we take to community policing, that's been their message throughout this difficult time for everybody in terms of folks exercising their free speech and it being about a profession they take a lot of pride in. I think they've shown great character in that regard. And I really want to acknowledge that, because that was a dominant challenge for us last week in the COVID-19 operations. We are also working, just like every other business, to try to figure out what reopening looks like. We anticipate that we will allow folks to make appointments with the staff, and we anticipate that when our counters are open for the public, we will use a queuing system. We've actually invested in software so that someone gets in line electronically with their phone, and they say, I'm in line to go in and get a building permit or talk to somebody at the front counter. And then they'll get a message when it's their turn, and the staff person that they're having a meeting with will meet them at the door of City Hall and take them to a safe space in City Hall so that social distancing and other precautions can be maintained. And we think that's how we'll open City Hall up here in the next week or two. Right now, quite frankly, I think the public is showing they want to do business with us online, and we're figuring out how to do almost everything we can with them online. So we may not be turning back in any way, shape, or form in that regard. I also wanted to let folks know that we have been working with our business community, particularly our restaurants, about moving out into the sidewalk, which is one of the things that was allowed under the most recent order. And that's part of actually the next item, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I want to thank the staff that's put a lot of time and energy in there. And then lastly, if you're a dog owner, you probably already know this, but if you don't, the dog parks are open again. So we did open them up. We might have cheated and opened them up the night before they were actually supposed to be open, but we had them open. So I'll turn back to you, Madam
Okay.
Mayor.
Are there questions from the council on business item 8.1, just the city's activity updates? And that brings us to 8.2, which is actually an emergency order, an acknowledgement of an emergency order.
Yeah, so the council empowered me as your director of emergency services to take actions necessary to move the city and the community through the COVID-19 experience. And one of the issues that arose between council meetings was the fact that the public health officer authorized outdoor activities for businesses out in the sidewalks, patios, parking lots. And particularly with the prospective businesses that wanted to be in the sidewalk, there's a lot of process involved with that and a lot of review. And we wanted to be able to expedite those activities for businesses that were interested in them. So with the guidance of Sky Woodard, your city attorney, we crafted this emergency order that I issued last week that allowed me and the staff to set aside rules that and fees that might prevent businesses who wanted to be out in the sidewalk to do that. And so we've had 2 restaurants that we're working with to have a compliant program out in the sidewalk. We went and engaged a lot of the businesses up and down Magnolia, which is the area we might anticipate interest in this program. We heard from a lot of shopkeepers that they really didn't want to be outside. They wanted their wares safely in their stores, and they were more anxious to see the public health officer allow them to start to allow 1 or 2 customers into their place of business following the guidelines. This was very helpful. We were really appreciative of the council empowering me to do these sorts of things. And we thought it was appropriate to bring any emergency order that I issued like this one to the next council meeting so that it was fully disclosed to the public and so the council could give me any feedback about it if necessary. So you have that order in front of you, and we're asking tonight for you to acknowledge and affirm it.
Are there questions about 8.2 and the emergency encroachment order? Okay, seeing none. I guess we did review it and we acknowledge that we reviewed it, and it sounds like we have affirmation to affirm it. So is that enough direction?
I'd suggest a motion just to make sure that we have a record of the city council confirming the city manager's order acting as the emergency services director.
Who would like to do that?
So moved.
That's Dan Hilmer. Is there a second?
I'll second it. That's fine.
Kevin?
Yep.
So we don't need to take a roll call vote on this, or I guess we do. So roll call vote for that, acknowledging and the affirmation of emergency order 20-01.
Councilmember Candell,
Yes.
Councilmember Hilmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Paulson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Haroff,
Yes.
Mayor Way.
Yes. That brings us to the end of our agenda items. I would just like to reaffirm for everyone that this Thursday, Chief Norton will be holding a forum at 9 a.m. and that information is available on the CMPA website and our website. And also look forward to having the Central Marin Police Authority Council meet an additional meeting sometime in the next week or 2. And that information will be available online for you and the public to submit questions and comments. So,
Madam Mayor, just if I could just request the city clerk to send just a reminder or a calendar invite for the CMPA event on Thursday, that it just help us in organizing our participation.
looks like that's a request to just, that'll work for you, Allison?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. So I'll take a motion to adjourn until June 17th.
So moved.
We're adjourned. Good night, everyone, and be careful out there.
I object.
Stay here for a while longer.
Okay.
Yeah, let's keep going.